Hey everybody, welcome back to a max velocity weather forecast, and tonight what we have is a special report on a potential tropical cyclone that may develop as early as next week in the Gulf of Mexico. Now this has actually been a system that's been showing up in the computer models the last 48 hours, and it might actually develop really right along the coastline of Louisiana and Florida. It's a very weird system, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown of what may occur over the next 5 days. But let's get right into the situation. So we do have a little low pressure system currently centered in the southeastern portions of the United States. Now again, there's not a whole lot of a jet stream here, and the overall factors of this moving, there's not a whole lot to move it. I mean, it's in a pretty decent spot right now in Georgia, but it's not going to really go off to the northeast because the high pressure system is way back out here in the eastern portions of the Atlantic Ocean at this point. So the chances of this system moving off to the east is extremely low. It's very stationary right now, but over the next couple of days, it's going to slowly shift down to the south, and it's actually going to go southwest, and eventually it will likely enter the Gulf of Mexico. Now, a couple of computer models are still showing this will not make it to the Gulf of Mexico, won't go that far southwest, but if it's able to, we very well could see a potential tropical storm develop just off the coast of Louisiana, possibly Alabama, Mississippi, and as well as Florida. That's kind of where the area of development is as of right now. It is a 30% chance of developing over the next 5 days, by the way, for those locations. Again, this is going to be a very weird system. It's not your typical type of tropical storm that you see on a typical basis just coming out of the Atlantic Ocean. Here's a look as of right now what we got. So again, the low pressure system is centered right about here in the center portions of Georgia. A lot of thunderstorm activity, again, really along the Carolina coast and as well as down into Georgia. Overall, though, not a whole lot of severe weather. There's been pretty minimal severe weather today, and overall, the severe weather will be pretty minimal the next several days. This was the system, by the way, that brought a decent amount of severe weather to really all the southeast over the last 3 to 4 days, but it is going to start winding down, it looks like, over the next couple of days. All right, let's take a look at the timing, the rain, and all that over the next several days. So as I mentioned, the low pressure system is currently, again, centered over portions of Georgia. Thunderstorm activity will still be possible over the next several days as this system tries to move down to the southwest. You can eventually see some showers and storms possibly in northern Florida going to tomorrow afternoon to the evening hours, eventually heading into potentially Tuesday and Wednesday. More shower and storm activity over the portions of the Gulf of Mexico. You can eventually see the low pressure system is kind of there. It's not very strong by any means, but it starts to try to strengthen a little bit over those warmer Gulf waters. Eventually by late Wednesday into Thursday, still trying to develop, and eventually by late Thursday into Friday, we start to see this little defined area of a low pressure system starting to develop. Now again, this is the European model, just one of many computer models, is indicating that we'd start to see a strengthening system right off the coast of, again, the Gulf Coast. I mean, it's a pretty impressive looking system. Again, it's not going to be moving a whole lot either, so that could potentially bring a flash flooding threat regardless of it even becoming a tropical storm or anything along those lines. The European model brings it as low as about 993 millibars, which again would possibly indicate somewhere around a category 1 hurricane if it were to strengthen to that level. Again, it's very early. We're not at the point yet where we can really forecast any intensity, but it very well could develop into something, and eventually going to late or early next week, it'll start to move into land and eventually start to move back off to the northeast where it really should be going for this time of the year. But other than that, that's kind of what we're looking at there. Now here's the wind field, by the way, for those that are curious on what the wind speeds could reach right off the coast. Again, the European model bring this as high as 60 knots right now, which is, again, 65 miles per hour, but sometimes they're underestimated a little bit, so we could even indicate that this could become as much of a 75 to 80 mile per hour tropical storm or hurricane. So definitely something to keep in mind. Again, it's very early. We'll give you the latest, again, as we get closer and any new developments. But here's a look at the the GFS model, excuse me. This model has been pretty wacky this year, honestly, in terms of the tropics, but it shows it much later developing. This is almost early next week that it starts to develop. The GFS model indicating maybe a little tropical storm developing. Other than that, though, it does strengthen a little bit, it looks like, maybe near New Orleans, but other than that, again, this is just one computer model. It's really not indicating that it'll develop that quickly. It's going to be a very slow development system, but it really strengthens really quickly going to early next week. Again, that's just one of several computer models. As of right now, though, the European has been pretty accurate this tropical season. Here's a look what the GFS indicates. Again, it starts to show that little low pressure system developing right near Louisiana and eventually making landfall, not nearly bringing as much of a flash flooding threat. Here's a look at the European model in terms of how much rain we could see if this were to occur, and it's indicating several inches. I mean, we're possibly talking 1 to 2 feet if this were to develop, again, there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then, but definitely something to keep in mind. Again, just make sure you're prepared if you're on the Gulf Coast. I know we're still a week out. No reason to panic, no reason to panic shop, no reason to evacuate by any means, but just make sure you're aware of this system. It still has several days until whatever happens, so no reason to panic, but just make sure you're aware of it. Here's a little quick look, by the way, at the Saharan dust as well. The Saharan dust is not going to be much of an impact on this system. You can see the Gulf of Mexico currently currently clear from that. There is a lot of cloud activity. The yellows and reds, by the way, do indicate Saharan dust, which we have a whole slew of that again across anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean back out to the east, which again, there's a lot of shear as well back out that direction. The overall developments out in the Atlantic Ocean seem to be very minimal over the next 10 to potentially 15 days. Here's a little look as well at the water temperatures, by the way. You kind of see the yellows are indicating about 30 degrees Celsius, so we are very hot for this time of the year right now. It is definitely hot enough for these tropical systems to potentially develop. Here's a look at the names, by the way. The next name, if we do get this to become a tropical storm, would be Danielle. So that's the next name. After that, it's Earl, and so on and so forth. And as of right now, again, here's a look at the tropical season so far. Again, we are now in about mid-June at this point, so we're actually right about here. We're starting to get to maybe a little more of a slight peak. Eventually, though, again, tropical storm activity as well as hurricane activity starts to really ramp up as we get into August. So obviously, a lot of things can happen in between now and then. Just make sure to stay updated again with Max Velocity here on our YouTube page for the latest. Make sure to follow or subscribe button down below. Make sure to hit the like button. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting and All Dense Repair.